host, Nelson, with Cascade Media Group. And today we have a young lady running for prosecutor here in Jackson County, Melesa Johnson. And as I always say, go back to kindergarten. And we'd like to welcome you on the show, Melesa. The floor is yours. Give our audience an overview and take your time on who you are, where you went to school, what communities you grew up. And then as you finish that, we'll talk about what your platform is.
Absolutely. Well, first and foremost, I want to thank you for your time and for having me on today. After our initial conversation, I did my homework. And so I am very privileged to be on this platform. And the reason why you started Cascade Media really rings true to the reason why I decided to run for Jackson County Prosecutor. And I think that will be clear when I tell you a little bit about myself and my background. Anybody that knows me knows that I am a proud product and current resident of the 3rd District. I am an Oak Park baby through and through. I am an Earl Abel kid coming out of Palestine Missionary Baptist Church, spent summers at Palestine Camp, Vacation Bible School, the whole nine. In high school, I was on Generation Rap, and so I'm also a mentee of the Jim Granddad Nunley, who has taught me a lot about the intersection of public health and violence and so many other issues that we face in our community. After high school, I went to Columbia University in the city of New York.
Hold on. Let me stop you. Let's go. What grade schools did you go to, and then
okay,
high schools? Run it down.
Oh, you want to dig? You want to dig deep?
Well, yeah, the people don't know you. They need to know. Yeah, I know. I knew Abel and all of them, but where did you go? Some of their kids might have went with you. I don't know.
All righty. So I went to elementary school and middle school in the Hickman Middle School District, specifically Truman and Dobbs Elementary. And then I went to Irvin Middle School. Right. Now, at the time, I was supposed to go to high school based on where I lived. I was supposed to go to Central High School. Well, at that time, they didn't have accreditation. And I'm a true believer that every child is one caring adult away from success. And I'm just blessed that my caring adult was my single mother that works 3 jobs to make sure that my sister and I had access to whatever it is that we wanted to do. And so she worked and worked and worked and wore the same pair of pants to work every day to save money to send me to Bishop E.H. High School because she saw something in us, right? But it was at that time I really understood the tale of 2 cities. Right. I'm going to Shawnee Mission, Kansas, studying with these affluent, very well-off individuals and coming right back home to deep in the urban core. And granted, I love my community. It's my home base. It's where I'm safe. It's where my roots are. It's where my heart is. But seeing the dichotomy between those 2 experiences made me quickly realize that life has not always been kind to my people. And it was at that moment that I really harnessed my passion for civil rights causes, for advocacy, for public safety. And I've also lost friends to gun violence. I've lost the fathers of my friends' children to gun violence. I'm 34 years old and I've run from 12 shootouts in my lifetime, the Chiefs Parade being number 12. There was a shooting at Californo's a couple of years where an off-duty Lee Summit police officer was shot and killed. I was there. You know, back in my Thundercat days, I used to be outside, Mr. Carlos, in the club, privilege, mingles, the Epicurean, etc. And I've seen some things. But I've always been so blessed to have an amazing village that while I might have tipped my toe into the margins, they kept me pretty much off of that page of heading down a negative path. And so when it was time for me to go to college, I'm an athlete as well. I ran track since I was 5 years old. I'm a hurdler. And so that's probably where I get a lot of my grit and tenacity from. I had the opportunity to go to the Columbia University in the city of New York, which further solidified the tale of 2 cities for me. You know, I'm studying next to Upper East Side Trust Fund babies, people wearing designer to class every day. And meanwhile, I'm just blessed and privileged that a little Black girl from Kansas City's East Side is on Columbia University's campus studying with the best and the brightest that this country has to offer, or at least that this country says they have to offer, right? Because we know there are brilliant people in our community. They just do not have the same access to those opportunities. I was fortunate enough to do so. And so I'm a firm believer that our price that we pay for the blessings that we receive in our time on earth is service. And I've always been service minded. I was a Generation Rap kid, like I mentioned to you. When I was in college, I actually worked for Congressman Emanuel Cleaver for 3 consecutive summers. And it was during that time that I learned about leadership, that you can maintain your moral compass while in office, things that have always stuck with me over the course of my life. After college, I went to law school at the University of Missouri in Columbia, Missouri, one Columbia to another. I graduated with honors, Order of the Barristers, placed nationally in a mock trial competition, and I caught that trial practice bug. I wanted to become a trial attorney. And so after law school, I was sending out job applications like crazy. And guess who gave me my first opportunity to practice law? Jean Peters Baker in the Jackson County Prosecutor's Office. Now, being a 24-year-old little baby prosecutor, and I'm telling my friends and my family and my extended family where I'm going to work, needless to say, I got a lot of side eyes, Mr. Carlos. You're going to do what? You're going to be one of them? At that moment, I realized that them can become us. I was still going right back home to Oak Park as a prosecutor, understanding that, yes, I need to advocate for victims, but I also have to focus on the restoration of offenders. I don't get the luxury of throwing people away and throwing away the key, right? It has to be a balance of both. And I've always understood that, even during that period where I tried everything from lower level drug crimes all the way up to murders. I even won Office-wide Rookie of the Year because I tried so many cases within the span of 1 year. I'm a trial practice junkie. I love it. I love it. But I also know that we have to deploy resources to get people back on their feet or prevent them from going down the road of criminality in the first place. But at this time, this was pre-contract negotiations with the prosecutor's office. I am the first lawyer in my nuclear family. The way my student loans were set up, I knew I needed at least to go try and make some money. And so that's what I did. I worked for 2 nationally recognized trial civil defense litigation firms. One, Seifert, Blumenthal, and Harris. Number 2, Baker, Sturkey, Cowden, and Rice, and even clerked for a federal judge that handled criminal cases on behalf of the federal judiciary. He's a Black man, and it was so amazing to see a Black federal judge that came from a 2-parent household. The conversations that we would have before he administered a sentence made me realize that empathy has to play a part in the criminal legal system. Call it the criminal justice system. It certainly has not always been just to people that look like me. And so from my federal clerkship and my experience as a civil defense litigation attorney, where I did go to realm as well, I got a call to return back to public service in the office of Mayor Quentin Lucas here at the city of Kansas City, working on issues revolving public safety, women and minority-owned business amplification, and even some houselessness policy at the outset of my term here in the mayor's office. Since I've been here, I have built programmatic efforts from the ground up with 0 staff and no budget. Okay, Partners for Peace, which is at the bottom of every single media advisory that KCPD sends out after a homicide. I built that from the ground up in August of 2022. Basically, what we do with that program is we offer resources to every victim of a non-fatal shooting, families of homicide victims, and even folks that we consider active crime drivers. You know, the person that shows up in about 6 police reports in a 3-month span. At minimum, young man or woman, you need better friends, right? And so let's figure out a way to interrupt that cycle of criminality with resources instead of always lazily relying on punitive punishment. I built that. 500 people last year alone with me and 2 social workers. These are the type of creative and innovative things that I have come up with in the course of my current role. I also lead a team called the Multidisciplinary Public Safety Task Force that was started and founded by Mayor Pro Tem Raina Parkshaw. And what we do there is we look at different commercial businesses that have had a lot of public safety challenges. I convene a task force of representatives from every single city department, public works, regulated industries, the health department, because I talked earlier about this being a public health issue. We do unannounced site visits, and then I take an inventory of all of the ordinance violations that we see. And I sit down with the owner and I have a very real, direct conversation. And I say, listen, I'm prepared to prosecute on all of these. Or you can work collaboratively with us to better invest in the safety of your patrons. The auto shop that was the home of an unfortunate mass shooting that took 3 lives and injured 9 on 57th and Prospect, as you'll see from the news stories, I shut that down. And I'm not being anti-business, I'm being pro-safe space. We have a responsibility to make sure that the people on our premises are protected. And if you're running an after-hours nightclub out of an auto shop and you know it's not properly licensed, I have to do what I have to do because I have 3 families who no longer have their loved one with them looking at me like, what am I going to do? Also, focus deterrence. If you remember anything about Casey Nova back in 2014, it was the last time our homicides were under 100. Well, fast forward to present day with a lot of tweaks to make it more palatable to the community because, hey, I'm 1 foot in and 1 foot out. Yes, I'm in the mayor's office. Yes, I am a lawyer. Yes, I am an accomplished lawyer and running for prosecutor. But I'm a city girl at the end of the day. And so I heard the conversations in the fodder about Nova being a snitch program, and it was too punitive and casting too wide of a net for the people that we invited to call-ins. And for those that may not be familiar, focused deterrence is simply a strategy where you identify those most likely to shoot or be shot, and you invite them to what we call a call-in. And you give them 2 options. You either avail yourself to the services and the help that we are here to offer, or land yourself on the prioritized prosecution list. I actually currently serve as the chair of the services subcommittee, which means I'm the one handling which resources and which programs we connect people that have found themselves in the new network. Because we know, as people of color, sometimes it's not always about the message, it's about the messenger. And because of that, we had our first call in on May 30th, just a couple of weeks ago. KCPD knew that somebody had to go to these homes of known shooters and deliver the invitations to invite them to the call-in. Who do you think they asked to do it? They asked me because they know I can take off my director of public safety hat and put on my Oak Park city girl hat and have a resonating conversation, a credible conversation with the young people we are trying to reach. One example, I went to one of the doors of the young man riddled with bullet holes, and you can tell he lived with his grandmother because you can spot a grandmother's porch from a mile away, okay? There's some certain artifacts that are on a grandmother's porch. Bullet holes in the blinds, bullet holes in the awning of the porch. I'm speaking to the young man and I'm telling him, listen, the time for you to debate whether or not you were going to leave this life alone is over. Because the next time that they come back, because I had 2 officers standing way back behind me, I won't be here with them, offering them help. So the time is now. Are you going to come to this meeting? Mr. Carlos, he looked me in my face and said, I'm going to try. And I said, well, they're not going to try to arrest you when it's time. So I'm going to ask you one more again, okay? Are you going to come to the meeting? He came. Another young man sees the 2 officers walking behind me and he tries to sprint off and run. I turn into my mother. The older and older I get, it's the most interesting phenomenon. And I just yelled out to him, see, that's how I know you're not living right. Get your butt over here and talk to me. You're not in trouble yet, but you're about to be if you don't chill out, relax. Don't you want to live a life where you no longer have to constantly look over your shoulder and keep your head on swivel? Mr. Carlos, he came to the meeting. These levels of cultural competence matter. And frankly, it's what our criminal legal system has been missing. A doctor by the name of Dr. Thomas Apps that works at Harvard said a quote that has just been ringing in my ear. In order for any public safety office, strategy, or program to be effective, it has to be deemed as legitimate by the demographic most impacted. What's more, what's more legitimate than a prosecutor, an elected prosecutor that didn't decide to leave the inner city when she started making some money? I've been a practicing attorney since I was 24 years old. Humbly, I could live a lot of other places, but I'm right here with my people fighting for safer communities because I live around seniors that have owned their homes for 40, 50 years and they're scared to walk outside. Who's advocating for them? But I also know I have to advocate for people who have not been dealt a good hand in life, that need access to resources, better paying jobs, etc. And so my legal professional experience, my personal experience, my experience in politics, in government, and building things with little to no resources, being creative, getting scrappy for the betterment of our community, all of those combined make me the perfect candidate for Jackson County Prosecutor. And when Jean Peters Baker announced that she was not running again for re-election, I naturally sat back and thought to myself, well, why wouldn't I? And it became a call to service that I just simply could not ignore.
So, with that being said, there was two things that struck a chord with me.
Mm-hmm.
One is programs. It's like Nancy Reagan per se saying, "Say no to dope." Is there? Where's the money behind all of the supportive programs and the supportive things that one needs to have? Do you feel that the prosecuting you've been in the office have the tools to connect with the clients they need? They're not clients, the people that they need to collect information from, and are they plugged into what's going on per se with your office, with their...
I'm so glad that you asked me about my service deployment plan and my vision for combat, the community-backed anti-crime tax. I believe there may be a story coming out in the call this week about some allegations that I just want to hand money to organizations and programs without requiring that they prove any level of efficiency or results. And that just simply could not be farther from the truth. My plans actually for combat is to make it easier for a Cascade Media to access those funds, to make it easier for a neighbor to access those funds. We have houselessness serving organizations that will put people on a 2-3 week waiting period, but because they have a fancy fiscal office, they are able to access combat funds because we all know there's a delay and they're only reimbursable, meaning that I at least have to have $250,000 in the bank for it to even make sense for me to apply for these funds. So that's fine. That's their business. But I know people at the grassroots level that will get a houseless person housed and fed within 24 hours. But they don't have that $250K to be able to apply for combat funds. When I say that I want to make it easier for grassroots organizations, the smaller ones that are actually touching the people that need resources the most, that means maybe you don't need 2 certified audits just to apply for combat funds, because I know a certified audit can cost anywhere from $4,000 to $10,000. We should be saying thank you.
To get funds, you have to apply
2 certified audits. These are administrative things that can be changed that advance the ball forward. And frankly, Mr. Carlos, that's why I get so frustrated when people want to attack and come for my credentials. I can build. I can leverage relationships for the betterment of expanding our capacity. It has to take both. You can't just be good in a courtroom to do this job in a sustainable as well. And that is what my background has enabled me to do. And so with combat, we need to be investing in media companies that actually reach the people to reach. We don't have a resource problem in our community. We have a connection problem in our
there
community.
we go. Now, hold it. Now you on my page. I'm like, who's running this stuff? So when you start talking about certified, if you try to certify my books, I don't have no books.
Thank you.
All right. But show me someone or a company that's doing what we're doing and reaching and getting what we're doing. So now that disqualifies me from all funds. Now, I think I told you I was a general contractor, right?
You did.
So
the biggest in Kansas City.
Yeah,
the biggest black one in Kansas City.
The second black, but that's not the point.
Mm-hmm.
You learn things. I
Yes.
told you I started painting for $25 a day. I graduated to doing concrete, and then I graduated to doing renovation. So you have a lot of successes and failures doing that, but you learn every time you fail.
Yes.
Oh, all right. So now we're talking about the 80s, right? Now what comes in is the first MBE. That's when MBE first come around. I go to Jeff City to speak to the Senate on why they should pass MBE. I don't really believe in no MBE. MBE is just like what you were saying in these orders. These things are to keep you out. White people don't have to say they white to get a job or to qualify. When you have to qualify for something like MBE, I'm black. What is that? You know, and they put that in, and that includes WMBE. And now that's another loophole for them to say, well, we servicing black people, but to get these contracts, but their wives now supersede their nieces, and they put the contract in a woman's name. Then they start widening that. You're only giving 10%. Now they say the rainbow, to me, I hate saying it, the blind, crippled, and crazy, everybody's in that bag of MBE. And when you start like with combating this, all you're doing is excluding who you don't want to deal with it or to get the benefit.
But those are the people that can reach 80% of all offenders, victims, and witnesses are people of color that live in the urban core. Why are we leveraging mechanisms to advertise services that do not resonate with the demographic we are trying to reach? It makes no sense, because here's the harsh reality, especially post-COVID. A lot of our main demographic is young men of color, especially ages 16 to 24. They're not in church congregations anymore. They're not watching the nightly news. But guess what? Grandma or auntie is watching to get them connected to the resources that we have to offer. Cascade Media Group. They're watching that. And these are the type of creative things that only somebody that is from here, that was raised here, and that operates and has chosen to continue to operate here understands. And these are the changes that I want to make with combat. I'm not trying to make it more difficult for my people. I want to make it easier for them to get connected to the restorative help that can either A, help them get back on their feet, or B, prevent them from going down the road of criminality in the first place. And at the bedrock of my plans for combat is a theory, an academically proven theory called trust-based philanthropy. I trust you already, Mr. Carlos, because you told me parts of your story. First and foremost, I want to take a moment to say that I am so proud of you for the heights that you have reached, understanding your journey. But I trust you because I see your audience. I see who you are able to touch. I need to trust that when I give you this money, yes, there will be some reporting mechanisms because these are taxpayer dollars. We're not just going to throw them around and hand them out with any regard or repercussion. But we do have to make it easier for these smaller, more intimate grassroots organizations to access resources because they are the key. Right now, with combat funds, we are sending white women, and this is no disrespect, but we are sending white women into schoolrooms full of Black and Brown children and expecting them to successfully teach conflict resolution.
That's
Life does
not
not
going to
work
happen.
that way. Life experience that comes from their neighborhood into these classrooms. We need to send somebody who they can see themselves in into these classrooms. I've never shot anybody. I'm a proud product of the urban core, but I've never shot anybody. I know plenty of people that have changed their life and are able to preach to these young people that are at the center of crime in ways that I will never be able to. Yes, they see me as big sis or auntie, but at his journey, that journey, telling you that there's a better way will go so much farther. And these are the type of things that we are not leaning into enough. Prosecution is not enough. We have to be willing to balance that with smart, innovative, and creative service deployment as well.
Let me say this. People always asking me, Carlos, why do you be on there with the congressman or whoever, and you be like, I'm a gangster posing as a businessman? Because that's the truth. And I say that so that my younger audience, they know you can't let your past dictate your future.
Absolutely.
And when I started, I was like, because I started with the Cascade Sports Company in '08 because they weren't covering our kids. But by 2012, I seen they weren't covering our community, and that's when I did What's Up Kansas City. But at the central part of this is when I started the sports and you're dealing with the young people, it was always in my mind, they're gonna come at you, man, because you did all this in your past and now you dealing with kids. That that kept me from doing some things that I really wanted to do. But then I was like, you gotta let everybody know that don't know your past. And so they're not gonna be able to do nothing with you because everybody already knows all of this stuff and they see what you're doing. And
Absolutely.
you've got to almost be a poster boy for and then you have to bring your history. Look who Malcolm was before.
Red, dirty red.
There we go, babe. Dirty red. And
Dirty
that
red.
does not mean that once your eyes are open, that you got to let that ball and chain be around your neck, not just your ankle, and stop you from going in the direction that you need to go. With that,
There is power. There is power in showing what is possible. Everybody doesn't come from a squeaky clean silver spoon background, right? So, but to still reach this height, that truth has to be spread, because if it's not, then young people who are coming from similar circumstances do not know what is possible. Part of our job as adults, as elected officials, as leaders, as community activists, is to make sure that we constantly expand our young people's horizons. And frankly, by you just being you and as candid and as sometimes off the charts as you are, Mr. Carlos, you are showing young people that you can be authentic, you can be who you are, you can own your story, and yet you can make mistakes, right? You can make some missteps, but you can still succeed. Now, with that, that's important to me. And I hope that that is clear during the course of this conversation, right? I have had uncles, people in my family that have journeyed similar journeys.
Every Black person, from my perspective,
yes,
when they made the war on drugs, and I'm old enough to see, come from where there were two-parent homes.
exactly.
For the most part, where my generation, what are some of the first generations to go to these Black universities back in the 60s and the 50s and get these degrees. But there was something lost in the sauce. Once we were able to do this, a lot of us moved out our neighborhoods. A lot of us start taking on the majority's community's values
Yep.
and all of that. What I want to do now, I want to close out. I want you to have your closing statements, and how can the community contact you? Give all of your information out at this.
Absolutely. Well, in closing, I've thoroughly enjoyed this conversation because it touches on a lot of the intangible things that have to be a part of our criminal legal system. And service deployment is very important to me. Traditionally, it would not be the responsibility of the prosecutor, but the Jackson County Legislature told us that the prosecutor oversees combat. And frankly, it is a responsibility that I welcome with open arms because I see these type of issues differently than anybody that has ever held this office. And frankly, anybody else that is in this race. And so while that is extremely important to me, be clear, Mr. Carlos, we have to hold some people accountable as well. We have to. Crime is tearing our communities apart. The homicide that just happened on Thursday morning around 1:30, I heard it in the middle of the night. I was that close. My home was that close. And so, yes, we have to make sure that people have adequate access to opportunity, but we also have to make sure that we are checking criminality when we have the opportunity to do so. And be clear, charging somebody does not always mean incarceration, or at least it shouldn't. I actually want to start another diversion opportunity called the Opportunity Court using combat funds. We have all of these specialty courts: drug court, mental health court, veterans court. But we don't have a specialty court tailored to the leading root cause of crime, and that is poverty. So all you have to do to be eligible for this opportunity court is, number one, have an eligible offense. Number two, make under $20,000 a year. Because there's data coming out of the Jackson County Prosecutor's Office that states every victim and offender, the average annual salary is less than $13,000 a year. Imagine the level of, well, you don't even have to imagine, right? The level of recklessness, right? The level of recklessness, and just the level, if you have children, if you have elders that you are responsible for. And so you're on this specialty court, the Opportunity Court. You get connected to modern workforce development opportunities. And respectfully, I totally respect your background, but we have a bad habit in this country of only telling returning and high-risk citizens, you can only do construction, which is honest and can be very lucrative work, right? If you go about it the right way. But what if a young person wants to get into media? What if they want to do a podcast? What if they want to monetize esports from their couch? What if they want to learn how to code? We have to make sure we have the full slate of opportunities because our young people deserve options too. But a job in isolation is not enough. We need to do the conflict resolution training because you need to know your means of solving conflict on the streets. Don't work in the employment arena unless you work for yourself. And then on top of that, financial literacy courses as well, because you need to be a good steward of your new earnings. Learn about 401ks, learn about unions and how they can protect your benefits and livable wage jobs. All of these things that are keys to creating intergenerational wealth. So yes, I do plan to hold more people accountable. We're going to ramp up charging, but we're also going to use that as leverage to connect people with resources so that these charges fall off of your record. And everybody will talk generically about what we need to do. We need to be more aggressive on crime. We need to attack property crime, but nobody's specifically talking about the how. My platform is all about the how because we need somebody that day one can get in that office and start working immediately. And in order for that to happen, your plans have to have a level of specificity and detail that you can start acting on them day one. We're going to be leveraging technology better to solve more cases. It takes us 2 months to analyze a cell phone collected in a violent crimes case right now in Jackson County. No wonder why our non-fatal shooting clearance rates are so low. In places like Las Vegas, they analyze cell phones within 48 hours. Their clearance rates are 89% for non-fatal shootings. We need to be leveraging social media. We do need to start prosecuting drug distributors again. But if it's a nonviolent offense, boom, This is where the opportunity court comes in, because naturally, where there's more opportunity, there will be less crime. And we also have to diversify the prosecutor's office. When I was there in 2014, I was one of 3 people of color in both the downtown and Eastern Jackson County office. To my understanding, that has not changed much. We know that diversity brings value to any industry. The same rings true for the prosecutor's office. And so all of these things in the aggregate is what is going to make this office better and more receptive to our needs as people of color who live in communities inundated with crime. Being able to prosecute and knowing your way around a courtroom in isolation is not enough. It's never been enough. We know that from history. We've tried to incarcerate our way out of this issue. It hasn't worked. It's not going to work. And so, yes, I might be young. Yes, my opponents have tried more cases than I have, but I have a distinct and unique set of experiences and professional background that makes me the obvious candidate for this position. And so I'm just very thankful for the time today. I have thoroughly enjoyed talking to you. You are like a walking history book. We have to do this more often. I would love to come back again. Of course, the election is on August 6th. And if you're ready for a mock, I would say I'm your candidate. And if so, you want to reach out to me, my website is www.mj, like Michael Johnson, Magic Johnson, Michael Jackson.com, and the word for is spelled out, MJFOR prosecutor.com. My email, because I love interfacing with constituents, making sure platform incorporates your needs, your ideas, and your concerns, is Melesa, Melesa, at mjforprosecutor.com. And again, whatever you do, make sure you vote on August 6th. And of course, I humbly hope that you vote for me.
All right. That was if you never got your your points across on any other show or article, you ran through it on this show.
And I appreciate you giving me the space and room to do so.
Well, hold it. That's what this whole thing is about. As I said, it's about communications and giving everybody a level playing field to plead their damn case.
Mm-hmm.
And so, with that being said, I'm gonna steal this crap from Jim Watts one more time because he was halfway really nice. He always closes his show with this old corny line. It was a plum pleasing pleasure having you on the show. I'd be like, Jim, cut out all them niceties. You know that's not how we work around here.
But it's catchy and it makes me feel valued and special. So maybe you should do it more often, Mr. Carlo.
This is our closing, as we always close. When you invest in your community, you're really just investing in yourself.
Absolutely.
This is brought to you by Kansas City Business Association, working to improve our community.